Thank y'all for tuning in tonight. So again, my friend, she asked me to stop making videos about Black people. She said, no more videos about Black people. Now, of course, she being a Black woman, she's talking about making videos about Angel Reese. And again, one of the greatest issues with the Black community is accountability. And so she said, don't make any more videos about Black people. And why don't you make videos about white people? And I had to remind her that I talk about white people all the time. It's just the white people that you all like. I'm not going to talk about Billy Bob in the trailer park. I'm not going to talk about Ray Nathan at the gas station. I'm going to talk about people that are ushering in this new world order, great reset, liberal world order, no matter what color they are. But the white folks that I talk about are the white people or Jewish people that actually have some influence and power in the world. What Black folks do is I'll be explaining about Klaus Schwab, and then they'll interrupt me and say, did you hear about a police shooting? Like, again, this is foolishness. Black folks are wrapped up in propaganda. And I'm going to show you right now how Black folks are being used. Now, the reason why I talk about Black people is because, again, Black people are going to be used to usher this stuff in. And I'm going to show you very plainly, very simply what I mean.
Continue to soar across the Southeast, according to recent data from the CDC. Officials say Metro Atlanta had the third highest rate of new cases among U.S. metro areas in 2021.
Fox 5's Joy Duke spoke with health officials about what they believe is driving the numbers. She joins us at the live desk with more. Joy?
Yeah, Courtney, Russ, Metro Atlanta saw more than 1,500 new cases of HIV reported in 2021. That's more than twice the national average. Health officials pointed to stigmas around the virus and access to care as ongoing issues contributing to those high numbers. The CDC's most recent data on new cases of HIV paints a startling picture of an ongoing health crisis in the Southeast.
We've seen that HIV is growing in the South, and Atlanta has some of the highest numbers in the South.
Metro Atlanta ranked third behind Memphis and Miami in new HIV cases in 2021.
Now, Atlanta ranks third behind Miami and Memphis. So what do those three cities have in common? Let's continue.
The 20-county Atlanta metro area accounted for more than half of the 2,371 new diagnoses reported statewide.
That's a shocking number, especially when we think about the fact that we're talking about human lives.
Jeff Cheek is the director of Fulton County's Department of HIV Elimination. He tells Fox 5 while national numbers have been trending downward, several factors have led to steady increases in HIV cases throughout the southeastern U.S.
In the South, we do not have good health coverage for anyone, not only people living with HIV disease. And so that's why it's so important for us to look at Medicaid expansion to see what we can do to help people.
Georgia would
coverage for anyone.
U.S.
In the South, we do not have good health coverage for anyone, not only people living with HIV disease. And so that's why it's so important for us to look at Medicaid expansion to see what we can do to help people.
So if you listen to the language, they have cities, Miami, Memphis, Atlanta, and I guarantee it's trending more with other cities like Jackson, probably Detroit, other cities, Baltimore, probably Philly. Yeah. These cities have higher Black population. Now, notice he said that there's no good health care for anyone in the South. So what's the stigma with the South? Again, this language means something because the media has already programmed you to associate words and phrases and ideologies with regions of the country. So when they talk about the South is known for being what? Red states and racist. So what he's saying is that the South, the white Republican red states, don't have good health care for anyone. We got to expand Medicaid. Now, the reason why these states shut down Medicaid was because folks don't know this. When you're on Medicaid and you can't pay your bills, or somehow you default on anything, they have access to take your home and your possessions. They're not going to tell you this, though. Again, this Medicaid thing is communism. Their goal is for you to get on it, not be able to pay, and then when you can't pay, they can seize your assets, i.e. your property. So again, That's why these states shut this stuff down. But the media tells black people they don't want you to have health care. And black folks run with it. And so black folks get on the ground and fuel this narrative. Black folks don't read, they don't research, they just pawns in the game. So again, the language in this is very suggestive towards people of color. If you look at the data says HIV and AIDS, it says gay men first, black women second, and transgenders third. So they can already associate a racist thing to HIV and AIDS. If you look up any article, it says disproportionate rates of AIDS in the black community compared to white. They already have you all conditioned. All they have to do is compare it to white and you all believe it's racist. It's no different than when it came to the Peter pandemic. They told you that COVID was taking out black people more than anybody else. They told y'all that the virus was racist and y'all ran with it. Y'all believed it. And y'all lined up and got that mRNA technology in your body. Now, I have many critics. The people they listen to are not going to break it down because you can't break this stuff down without holding black folks accountable. It's impossible. So again, they've already associated HIV and AIDS with racism. So that means when they bring these topics up, they're going to use you all to make sure they can push for this universal health care, this universal basic income. All these things are communism. And like I said on my live about Amanda Seals, monolithically Marxist. That's what black people are. But let's continue.
Georgia was one of 10 states that opted out of Medicaid expansion. Dr. Cecil Bennett says access to care isn't the only issue in the South, where finding doctors who care for patients with the virus may be more difficult.
We have to remember that, we're still in the South and there's a lot of stigma attached to the LGBTQ community.
While Cheek says the numbers are concerning, his office remains committed to connecting HIV-positive patients with providers. And
who are they showing you in the videos? Black people. Now, we all know that they put this stuff in these snake bites. And so we all know that there's about 30-some different versions of these snake bites. Again, to my critics, I guarantee the people that you follow are going to tell you this. They have about 30-some different versions of those snake bites. One of the issues with the snake bites is what you see right here. And if you go do your own research, you can look up and even see that Johnson & Johnson used a strain of the HIV virus to make their snake bite. I've done videos on this before. Go to my page if the video is even still up. You see, my critics talk a lot about me, but they never critique when I'm talking. When I'm speaking and dropping all this stuff, they never talk about this. They just say he's a coon because they don't want you to be held accountable. Now, if they put this stuff in these snake bites and everybody walking around with these snake bites, we're talking about 7 out of 10 people in America got these snake bites. 7 out of 10 at least. All this means is you can't be sleeping around. We back to accountability. All these snake bites really did was magnify your personal responsibility to your temple. And now they're telling you that these rates are on the rise. And I guarantee, check out the snake bite rates in these cities. I guarantee they're high for black people. Now, this is why I talk about black people. Because they're going to use you to usher in this stuff. You don't believe me? Okay. Let's go to the United Nations fighting racism. The United Nations has a global agenda to fight racism. That sounds noble, right? In fact, they have one day. The day is International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. So again, you can go look this up. You can go look it up yourself. The UN has an initiative to end racism. Now, how does the UN's initiative to end racism, how does that connect to black people? How do those two dots connect? Now, when it comes to racism, who is the global poster child for racism? What is considered the most racist country in the world? We know it's America. So America is deemed the most racist country in the world. That's due to propaganda and media manipulation and programming. Who are the poster child for racism? Is the blacks. So now we have the UN with a global effort to get rid of racism. And we know that America is seen as the most racist country. And we know that black people are the poster children for racism. Now, Blanche, how does the UN, the US, and the blacks connect? What do I always say about this great reset, this new world order, this liberal world agenda? What do I always say about the UN troops being on the ground? Remember, listen, don't I always say you're going to wake up one day and it's going to be UN troops on the streets? Don't I always say that? Don't I always talk about the UN troops on the street, the Chinese troops on the... I always talk about this. So Blanche, how do the UN troops, the black people, and America being racist, and the UN's initiative against racism, how does that all connect? I'll tell you. Let's see what Biden said about the UN and racism. UN racial justice reviews gives Biden opportunity to center international human rights. The administration claims significant progress in its report and presentation to the United Nations, but true progress has been sluggish. Every few years, the United Nations Committee of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination convenes to review the United States adherence to the similarly named Racial Justice Treaty ratified by the U.S. in 1994. Given that the last U.S. review took place under the Obama administration in 2014, this year's review, this is 2022, was a first for the Biden administration. As expected, the Biden administration claimed significant progress on racial justice in reports and presentation to the committee. However, more than a year into his term, a few of President Biden's commitments on racial justice and human rights have been realized. Where the U.S. stands on racial justice today. When President Biden took off, he promised to reverse years of Trump-era disengagement on the international stage and Center for Racial Justice and Equality at home and abroad. One of his first acts as president was to sign an executive order aimed to achieving racial equity in the U.S. and announcing the order Biden called systemic racism, corrosive, destructive, and costly. We agree, but these remarks do not excuse the meager progress that the U.S. has made towards realizing the promise of the treaty to eliminate all forms of racial discrimination. Pay attention. The U.S. has intentionally exempted itself from human rights demands that it has pressed on other countries, while permitting structural racism and xenophobia to operate as pervasive and unbridled forces in American society. Now, 2023, United Nations. UN rights experts slam systemic racism in U.S. police and the courts. Now, again, it's chaos going around the whole world. But when it comes to racism, the UN is focused on America. So my question to you all is, if the UN is focused on America, how are they going to end racism in America? They're saying the police are the bad guys in America and the courts. So how do we get to end racism in America? If the police are bad and the courts are bad, how do we fix it? The UN will come in and do what? Replace the police and replace the courts. A new report by UN international experts advancing racial justice and equality in policing, published after an official visit to the country, shows that Black people in the U.S. are 3 times more likely to be killed by the police than if they were white, and 4.5 times more likely to be incarcerated. Dr. Tracy Kesey, an expert member of the task force, said the testimony she heard on how victims do not get justice or redress were heartbreaking and unacceptable. All actors involved, including police departments and police unions, must join forces to combat the prevailing impunity, she said. Next headline, a legacy of slavery. During their country visit, the experts heard testimonies from 133 affected individuals, visited 5 detention centers, and held meetings with civil social groups as well as government and police authorities in the District of Columbia, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Chicago, Minneapolis, and New York. They say that the racism in the U.S., a legacy of slavery, the slave trade, and 100 years of legalized apartheid that followed slavery abolition continues to exist in the form of racial profiling, police killings, and many other human rights violations. This was in September of 2023. So again, when they came over here, they found that America was extremely racist. And I just want to pull this article up. I want to pull it up. But they came and said that America was extremely racist. I'll just show you the article because you're not going to read it. Read the headline. UN writes experts slam systemic racism in U.S. police and courts. And again, you see legacy of slavery, chained in childbirth. The experts condemn the appalling overrepresentation of people of African descent in the criminal justice system. They express concerns over instances of children from the diaspora being sentenced to life imprisonment, pregnant women in prison being chained during childbirth, and persons held in solitary confinement for 10 years. Not just a few bad apples. The report notes that there were more than 100,000 cases of killings by police each year in the country, but only 1% result in officers being charged. Very misleading stat. Very misleading stat. Now, listen what they did now. They told you all black, 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 but then said 1,000 killings. You know why? Because 0.03% of police of homicides in the black community are caused by the police. 0.0%, 0.03%, I'm sorry. So what we have is the UN saying they want to fight racism. The poster children for racism are black people. The poster board for racism is America. So the UN is saying that America is this bad when it comes to racism and it can't be fixed. What is their solution? Now, the reason why they were here doing this is because Joe Biden invited them back in 2021. I need all of my detractors to listen. I'm such an Uncle Tom. I'm such a sellout. I'm such a bootlicker. And I'm such a coon. But ain't none of your favorite black woke people telling y'all what's about to happen. None of your favorite weekend warriors are telling you all what's about to happen. Now, when the UN comes here, who do you think they sit down and talking to? Who do you think the UN is sitting down and talking to? Well, let me get you upset first. Police brutality is a communist narrative. Black people disproportionately commit the homicides and violent offenses. They also disproportionately attack the police because black culture is violent. How do we know that? Because black culture says if you spin the block and you happen to shoot a child, shh, don't snitch. You listen to the music, black music says kill, murder. So again, black culture is violent. That's a fact. Matter of fact, the rappers complain that they have to make that type of music to make money. So black culture is violent. Police brutality is a communist narrative. 0.03% of homicides in the black community are caused by the police. Go look the numbers up. But I'm going to give you context, though. They never tell you how many were armed. You know why? Because 99% of the time, the person has a weapon. That's why. So they give you a blanket number, but they never give you context. That's why it jumped from black, 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 black to 1,000 killings. Because they know out of those thousands, you got white people who make up the majority, you got Hispanics, and you got Asians, and you got blacks. So they can't say that. They got to just go black, 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 then 1,000. But now remember, people, my detractors, Black Lives Matter was called or is called Black Lives Matter Global Network. We are moving towards a one world government. So Black Lives Matter Global Network, the United Nations is going to fight racism in the US. So how do you think, let me backtrack. When the UN came over here, who are they sitting down and talking to? Who were they sitting down and talking to? This is why I get on black folks so much. Who was the UN sitting down and talking to when they came to America? Who was sitting down giving the UN all these testimonies? Now remember, critical race theory is founded in storytelling. The UN said they heard from 133 individuals. They heard what? They heard stories. A lot of this stuff deals with stories and narratives and propaganda. So who do you think that the UN was sitting down with and talking to get all this information to deem America this horrible and wicked place? They were sitting down with the bliggity blacks. So when it came time for the UN to need a reason to put troops on the ground, who was responsible for the UN troops coming to America? Who's responsible for giving the UN troops a green light to come to America because they're brainwashed with propaganda? That's right. Black think tanks. Black people and white liberals was in there talking. So now you can understand why I'm always getting on black people, because black people are going to usher in everything that we see happening. Every agenda they're going to push, every single agenda is going to deal with race. And if it deals with race, it's going to deal with black versus white. Every agenda. So the UN troops coming to America, they're coming via what? Fighting racism. When it comes to climate change, fighting racism. When it came to y'all getting them shots, fighting racism. Black people need to be the first ones in line to get that shot. Every agenda they push, they're going to use black people. Now, black people want me to be quiet about it and just let everybody die. I'm connecting the dots for you as plain as day. Joe Biden invited the UN to come over and investigate racism. The UN came over here, and of course, they found that America's racist. So what's the next step? The next step is, if the police are bad and the courts are bad, they're going to bring the UN troops over here. Welcome, Klaus Schwab and the Great Reset. Thank you, dear black people. The prideful, arrogant, ignorant black people, thank you so much. Lying to the UN to get them over here. This is why I focus on black people. This is why. Because black people are going to single-handedly usher in the Antichrist. How could you say that, Blanche? Just give me one wicked agenda in America. They ain't got a black face attached to it. If I talk about abortion, black women. Homicide, black men. Low education, black children. HIV and AIDS, black women, black gays, black trans. Every agenda has a black face attached to it. You won't find any negative press on black people. You know why? Because they want you to believe that everybody black is righteous. Now imagine black people. I'm about to play a video. Imagine black people being more upset with me than there being more babies aborted than born in New York. Imagine black people being more upset at me than the over 20 million babies that have been aborted. Think about what I'm telling you. Imagine black people being more upset at me when most black children can't read, write, or do math on grade level? Think about what I'm telling you. Black people are mad at me, but not the atrocities that they're committing. And the only solution is to don't talk about black people. That sounds like Satan. In fact, that is Satan. The UN troops, the Chinese troops are going to be in America. And you got black people to thank for it. When it came to these snake bites, black folks was pushing it the hardest. Black people. From the girl Kismekia on the team that created it, to that black nurse that got it. The first person to get that shot was an old white lady in England. No, you don't even remember her. The first person to get this shot was an old white lady in England. You don't even remember her. But you remember that black nurse? Because she was the first one that got it over here. Every single agenda is going to have a black face attached to it. So there's a very difficult question we have to ask, dear black people. If you all are being used to usher in this great reset, this new world order, where it's literal global communism, the enslavement of humanity, if you all are being used to usher it in, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Let's continue.
Hey, oh, well, Crystal, you can't tell people to not have an abortion when you've had abortions. Well, if you went to prison and you came out of prison, are you disqualified from telling somebody, hey, don't go to prison? Of course you should be. You should be the very one that tells people don't go to prison. You kill your baby, there are consequences that will far surpass this generation. If God will judge an entire nation, and he even talks about it. He talks about poverty and sickness coming upon you when you shed innocent blood, right? Think about the poorest among us. Think about the ones that most poverty happens to. Think about the most crime. It is directly correlated with the people who have the most abortions. Black Americans have the most abortions. They just think that, oh, I just don't want the baby and I'm having it. I don't want to deal with it. Fine. You don't have to deal with the baby, but now you got to deal with the poverty, the sickness, all the destruction that's going to come into your life because of that. I wonder if we talk to these young women and these young men and say, no, maybe it's not because of racism. Maybe it's because of the death and destruction you have sowed into your future.
That is the red-pilled brown girl. And she made an excellent point. Black people have convinced themselves, and leaders like Umar Johnson and Tariq Nasheed and all of them, that they are above sin. Meaning, black people have an excuse to sin, they blame white people. What I'm telling you, black people, is that doesn't work in the real world. In the real world, you're going to reap what you have sown. So what is the harvest for over 20 million abortions? Now, it would be different if there were over 20 million abortions and y'all were against it. But what's the harvest you're going to reap for 20 million abortions and you're promoting more? What is the harvest for 20 million abortions and you're promoting more? What is the consequence for that? What is the consequence for leading the nation in homicide? What is the spiritual consequence for not just leading the nation in homicide, but also glorifying the music that tells people to continue to do it? You see, what black folks don't realize is the reason why this stuff is really going on is because even when you have an opportunity to do what's right, you double down on Satan's plan. You double down on decadence. You double down on death. You double down on destruction, and you double down on damnation. You double down. Even when I come up and say something, you tell me, but white people. Think about this now. All of this stuff going on in the black community, from the disease to the poverty, to the low education, to the homicides, to the abortions, to the poor health, all these things that go on, And now one time have y'all thought that maybe it's something that we're doing. And the media is so clever. And the media just says all of your ills, your white counterparts don't have them. Your white counterparts are doing better. Now they got y'all trained to believe that your sin falls on the hands of white people. The devil is clever. The enemy is clever. Now the devil has y'all committing sin because you believe that white people cause you to do it. All your woke leaders will never talk about accountability from a personal standpoint. That means we aren't justifying nothing. White people should never come into your discussion. If you are truly focused on what God has for you and your purpose in life, you don't have time to think about white people. There's no way you could be out here building and think about white people. And you see, back in the day, black folks built so much because they weren't thinking about white people. Think about it. Look what y'all forfeited. You forfeited using your hands to build and till the ground, and you traded that in to talk about white people. Y'all not building anything anymore. You're complaining and whining and crying, starting with the men. So to all my detractors, this is why I talk about black people. Black people are upset at me. You all are upset at me, but not the over 20 million. That is a country. Y'all have murdered a country's worth of babies. And the most sick and wicked thing is that you all don't want nobody saying about it. You telling this young lady to be quiet. You had an abortion, you can't talk. I had 3 abortions, and I'm still going to talk. It's murder and it's wrong. I had 3, and it's still wrong and it's murder. Black folks' solution is, if you did it, don't say nothing. That's a coward. Because I did it, I'm going to say something. Because I owe it to the people to say something. Black people's solution to all of this death and destruction and damnation is to be quiet. That girl came up to me and said, Blanche, don't make no more videos about black people. And just last September, black people done signed off to bring the UN troops to America. But don't say nothing, Blanche. You be quiet. Well, in context of what Pastor Manning was saying, black folks claim to have built all that stuff under white rule. So again, they claim to have been oppressed during these periods. I don't believe they were. So again, the theory is that black folks were being oppressed during that time. I don't buy it. I think that black people wanted to be independent. They wanted to build. They had some values and characters. Jim Crow wasn't stopping them. Segregation wasn't stopping them. Like any other community, you just deal with your own. See your boy talk about reparations.
If you start giving niggas, let's say every black person in America will get $10,000 next month in January, that niggas will be broke again on January 15th. It has to be organized. You cannot give niggas money right now. They'll fuck it right back up. They'll give it right back to everybody else.
So Tariq Nasheed doesn't have faith in black people. And again, listen to me. If he feels this way about black people, then how does he feel that he can lead them? He doesn't think about, he's not trying to lead you all. He's making money off of you all. He just said, if you get reparations, y'all gonna give it right back. Now, this may be a few years ago, but what's changed since then? Have black folks gotten smarter? No. Black folks just lined up for Joe Biden and lined up for the shot. So black folks ain't gotten smarter. So where he's talking at now, it's worse now with black people. They know less. So again, if Tariq Nasheed feels that black folks can't even handle $10,000, then how in the world he gonna give them reparations? What is he fighting for? If he believes that black people couldn't even handle 10,000, then what's he actually fighting for? Oh, let me guess. They get the money and give it to him so he can invest it? Oh, I get it. Y'all get the check, but let me manage it for you. Let's continue.
Gone by June, shit. It'll be gone in 15 days. Just like lottery, exactly. Just like lottery winners. Most lottery winners, they go broke in 5 years. Just like that Dave Chappelle comedy skit. That's what messed that money up. What they need to do, as far as reparations, it should be a designated plot of land or somewhere in middle America, somewhere where there's good fertile land that should be given, that should be tax-free, that should be regulated to male-headed households. That's my suggestion. They should get a plot of land somewhere where there's very fertile ground, fertile land, and it cannot be settled unless it's a male, a black male who's the head of the household. We can't have no single mothers on it.
Now, the black community is comprised of mostly single mothers. 30% of black folks are married. Out of that 30%, even though they're married, I would say 20% of them, no, I'm sorry. Out of that 30%, I would say that 90% of them households are ran by black women. So, but let's, for argument's sake, 30% of black people are married. So that means that reparations will only go to 30% of black people. Now let's see how many black folks are farmers. In 2017, the United States had 48,697 producers who identified as black, either alone or in combination with another race. They accounted for 1.4% of the country's 3.4 million producers, and they lived and farmed primarily in the southeastern and mid-Atlantic states. So in 1919, black farmland ownership peaked at 16 to 19 million acres, about 14% of the total agricultural land. A century later, 90% of that land has been lost, even though farmers of color now account for only 2% of the agricultural land. So if we go with the bare numbers, what we see is 30% of black people eligible for reparations, with there only being 48,000 farmers that are black. How many out of that 30% know anything about farming? If we take the national average, which is 1%, we could assume that 1% of that 30% are farmers. So now Tariq Nasheed has this grandiose plan to exclude 70% of black people from reparations and then give them some land that they have no idea how to farm. Even if the land is tax-free, even if it's just a free plot of land, some acres, let's say it's 5 acres for each of these black families, what are they going to do with it if they can't farm? How many black people see the importance of farming, growing their own food, living off grid? Not that many. Black culture has nothing to do with hard labor on a farm. Nothing. It's too much like slavery. Working on a farm for black folks is too much like slavery. Again, these people run their mouth, but these plans are not well thought out. 30% of black folks get reparations, get land, which comes in the form of land. What are they going to do with it? They about to all of a sudden leave their job in the city and become farmers. Remember that show Green Acres, where they moved from Manhattan to the farm? It was rich. Remember that? Black people suffer from magical thinking. This is a magical thought. It wasn't well thought out. He's just talking. But he gets a pass because he says that white folks are bad, but not white women. He gave them high praise. And he also said that white women come from decent households, headed by white men. Shh, don't say nothing. His plan is not well thought out. You know why? It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Because black folks won't hold them accountable. You about to give acres of land in middle America to black folks who don't even want to live in middle America. Black folks don't want to live way out in the country somewhere. And why are we being honest? Black folks ain't thinking about farming. They're not thinking about living off grid. Yes, they is. Black. No, they're not. But Blair, I started a community garden in my. No, they're not. But Blair, I grow a plant in my back. No, they're not. This man is the face for reparations, and he's this foolish. At this stage in the game, the 10,000 would do more than the acres would. Now, maybe you could say they might sell the acres to somebody, because most of them not going to farm the land. They're not going to tend to it. It's just going to be a bunch of acres out there. How they going to get to the land? They got to spend money to get to the land. They got to inspect the land. That costs money. Do you know how much money goes into farming? Talk to Molly. Do you know how much money goes into farming? Let's continue, man.
See, if we implement something like that, it would have to be, it would almost get into like almost sexism, but it's not, man. We can't have that single mother shit. We got too many broken homes, and a lot of these single mothers are not held accountable. It's just too much bullshit going on in the hood, and it's a direct result of all these single mothers. We can blame.
He's talking about a plan for reparations that excludes 70% of black people. He's talking about giving 30% of black people land who know nothing about farming, who have no means to turn that soil to be used for some crops. It would take years for black folks to learn how to farm just to tend to the land. But Klaus Schwab said by 2030, you're going to own nothing and be happy. To all my detractors out there, what your obligated black leaders aren't telling you is that the clock is ticking. By 2030, you're going to own nothing and be happy. There is no such thing as racism. In these global agendas, you ain't heard nothing about race. Universal basic income, you done heard chips, you done heard IDs, you done heard social credit score, you ain't heard nothing about race. But they got black people running around here spreading the propaganda. And some of y'all missed it. Some of us know how to farm. There are 48,000 black farmers out of 45 million. Some of us know how to farm. 48,000 farmers out of 45 million. But Blair, some of us know how to farm. The black mind is a child's mind, especially the black man. The 4 pillars that plague the black community, number 1 is being emotionally unintelligent. Number 2, the black man suffers from arrested development. Number 3, the black woman has no humility. And number 4, the black child does not know who he or she is. Those are the 4 pillars that plague the black community. And so the problem with the black community is most black men aren't fit to lead because they blame white people, which puts the black woman in a leadership role. But women can't lead. So you know who's in that leadership position? When the black man is absent, the position is still vacant. You know who's sitting in there? I'll tell you, Satan. God has an order. And it's not like out of God's order you get to slide. That's not how it works. That vacant spot that black men gave up, Satan is sitting there. But Blair, some of us know how to farm. Ain't looked up no numbers. Haven't looked up any numbers, no statistics, no facts. No, they're just running their mouth. Talking emotionally like a woman. Most of these black men, they talk emotionally. They don't sit down, collect their thoughts, and give a clear message. Look at them. You abuse your platform. You abuse your platform. You get to get on your platform and talk about black people. Tell me one lie that I've said about black people. Give me one. What does God say about judging? You can judge. You sure can judge. God don't say you can't judge. God says you can't be hypocritical when you judge. You see, black folks try to be slick. The Bible say don't. That ain't what the Bible say. The Bible say don't judge. That ain't what the Bible say. The Bible say don't be hypocritical when you judge. You got to judge righteously. Let's continue.
Name all the missing dads and all that shit all day. Just these single mothers raising some little bitch niggas out here, right?
You heard Tariq Nasheed's plan for reparations. It's not feasible.
Family was given housing priority over African-American families. And she wrote about that in her book to share to people that, like, during that time, America was intentionally bringing Caribbean families here and giving them more generational wealth and taking that away from the African-Americans that were already here.
So I went to Brooklyn College too, and I have this Trinidadian professor. But what she said was like, back in like the 60s, 70s, they wanted a more docile N-word. They was doing too much.
Yeah.
So they brought over the more docile, well-behaved, hardworking Black people from the Caribbean, and they gave them opportunities to land, and
family was given housing.
So what you all were doing was actually productive. Y'all was just tearing up stuff and causing chaos. You don't make good investments, because think about what she said. She said hardworking. Y'all didn't want to work. The only way you can bring in foreigners is if your current group ain't doing it. And it's clear by the 1970s where the black mind was. It had been fried by social justice. Well, in order to be a capitalist, you got to believe in pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. And black folks have already said, how we gonna pull ourselves up by the bootstraps if we ain't got any boots? So it's hard to be a capitalist with no boots. Control. But again, so they use this term called tether. Now, many of these heathens on that side of the aisle, they believe that I'm a tether because of the way I speak. They don't realize that I don't identify as black. So they think that, oh, he's from Africa, he's from whatever, and my family is from America. What you call Native Americans, all that, on both sides of my family, going back to Oklahoma, going back to Virginia, all going trace back. Arkansas, all trace back. My family been here.
The basic income program gives black women $850 a month. Never mind that this is racist as hell, but don't you realize this is the bigotry of low expectations? Come here, little Negro. It's not your fault that you can't do shit that adults should be able to do on a basic level. We'll help you. We won't require more from you. We'll just lower the bar so you can continue suckling from that government teat.
Now, black people could have said, we don't want welfare. Black folks could have said, we want the same thing y'all giving to the foreigners. Ain't that what old girl said? And what they said? They were intentionally giving that stuff to the people from Africa and the Caribbean. So if that was the case, then why didn't black people say, we want it? Think about this now. Think about them offering you success via you working hard, or you can sit down and get a check. Black folks chose the welfare state. They chose it economically, and they chose it spiritually, and they chose it physically. That's why black folks are begging. Even this right here, giving black single mothers $850 a month for what? So let's focus on the present. In present day America, black people are getting everything they want. You got black mothers getting a check for being a single black mother. They're getting a check for it. Hold up. They can have a job and still get an extra $850 a month. You know what an extra $850 a month would do? What are they doing now for black people? Everything. Black folks are getting the red carpet rolled out for them. I can go online right now. It's all kind of programs for black single mothers, for black women, for black trans. They giving the trans a check in California, in Palm Springs, and San Francisco. They get $900 in Palm Springs, and they getting $600 in San Francisco just for being trans. They cutting a check for everybody. Talking about the housing crisis. And in 2006, they was putting black folks in mansions. In 2006, I remember black folks was working at the grocery store, and they stayed in the house with 8 bedrooms. They was approving black folks for everything. And then black folks turned around and said they was racist. I'm gonna tell the truth on this channel. They was approving black people to live in mansions, and black folks had the audacity to turn around and call them racist. I remember.
Believing that if most people believe a thing, that thing must be true. In a sense, you can call it the fallacy of consent. People naively believe in the authority of their collective genius. It's unthinkable to them that there are actually sinister people who are behind what you call public opinion or consent, who are in fact engineering public opinion and consent, who are spoon feeding you your beliefs by way of academia and entertainment, politics, news, using these institutions to subvert the autonomy that you think you have.
So what Chad so eloquently stated is, and this is actually a tragedy. It's actually a travesty that Chad, Chuck, Keisha aren't even elevated to the highest levels. Like, they are truly like national treasure. It's just a tragedy that they have to be subverted by all of this nonsense. It's tragic for Tariq Nasheed to have more of a public presence than Chad O. Jackson, Teachum Chuck, and Keisha King. I'm sorry. It's an absolute outrage and indictment on black people that Umar Johnson is held higher than cutting through the culture. It's actually disgusting. But what Chad is saying for the Tariq Nasheed followers is that what you think is your thought isn't your thought. Your thought has been meticulously programmed since you were born. So how you think and view the world now was taught to you from birth, through imagery, through the public school system, through the media, through the propaganda. All of it led to where you are now. So now your thoughts are not your thoughts. When the media shows you police brutality over and over and over again, you're being programmed. Black folks are like Pavlov's dog. When they hear racism, they start salivating at the brain. Black people are like Pavlov's dog. When they hear the word racism or white counterparts or compared to the whites or disproportionate, when they hear those words, they start salivating at the brain. You already been programmed. You don't even know it. You don't even realize it. These people have a sinister and malicious agenda. They are force feeding you all narratives and programming. And you're so prideful. You're so both, you can't even see it. You're so arrogant. You can't even see it. That your whole life is one big program. It's like the Matrix. The most pivotal scene of the Matrix is when Morpheus tells Neo, you have been reduced to this, a battery. That's all black people are. Y'all are charging up the New World Order. You are the power for it. Let's continue.
I was a member of the United States Committee on Public Information. I found that ideas were weapons and were even more effective than bullets.
He said he learned that ideas were more effective than bullets. The solution is you rejecting the propaganda. The first solution is for you to reject the propaganda. If I know that ideas are more deadlier than bullets and I don't want to get shot, I reject the propaganda. That is the first step for black people. And rejecting propaganda is going to require you to question everything that you have been taught. Everything that you have consumed since your childhood has to be questioned. Ask the tough question. If slavery was so prevalent, why aren't there any slave ships? Simple question. If slavery is what they always point to, if slavery is what they always bring up, even the UN brought up slavery. If they always bring up slavery, then why can't they show you one slave ship? You can go to a museum, you can see a woolly mammoth, you can see a T-Rex. They digging now and finding stuff 40,000 years old, ancient artifacts, 100,000 years old. They finding ancient stuff every single day, but they ain't got one slave ship. They only got 5 that they found on record. They told y'all that it was 14,000 voyages, and they only got 5 slave ships on record. No slave ship in a museum, no national slave ship monuments. You mean to tell me America's so racist and there's no slave ship monument? You mean to tell me America is so racist they didn't take the time to even make a fake one? Everything points back to slavery. And the main thing about slavery is the slave ships. It's equivalent to them saying, we went to the moon, we don't have any spaceships. Y'all wouldn't believe it. If they said we went to the moon, but we can't find any spaceships, y'all would say that don't make any sense. They brought y'all over here to the tune of 300,000, but they don't got no slave ships. Same like when they say weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons, but then when they went looking for them, they didn't find them. So don't ask me about solutions if you're not willing to take the first step. I offer solutions, but they're going to require you to be a man and stop being a coward.
Your public opinion for their own interest, which is increased power.
We worked out the and committee
Using these institutions to subvert the autonomy that you think you have.
I was a member of the United States Committee on Public Information. I found that ideas were weapons and were even more effective than bullets.
Man to man, I want an answer. Why would they be hiding me from the general public if I'm preaching the message of white supremacy and racism? Finally, boss came around and said they don't want us to hear the truth exactly. So when I'm talking to you all, instead of questioning so much, why don't you listen? Because what I'm saying is making Instagram say we don't want folks to hear it. What Tariq Nasheed is saying, they want people to hear it. What Umar Johnson is saying, they want people to hear it. What all these bliggity blacks and wiggity wokes are doing, they want people to hear it. But they don't want people to hear me. And there's a reason why. Let's continue.
That ideas were weapons and were even more effective than bullets.
They exploit your public opinion for their own interest, which is increased power.
We worked out the engineering of consent. The consent of the public is basic to anyone's meeting his or her social goals.
Your ideas are essentially theirs. They tell you what to believe. They insist that you lead with those ideas in the public square, and then they call it democracy or self-determination. Through these subversive means, they tell us who to love, they tell us who to hate, and we genuinely believe that our love or hatred for a given public figure or historical figure is well-founded, even though it's...
So, for example, the media told people to hate Trump. The media also told people to love MLK. Like, this ain't rocket science, people. Your thoughts are not your thoughts. And it takes a true person. When I say true person, I mean a person that actually says, Lord, remove the scales from my eyes. I'm ready to walk like Christ. That is the only way you're going to see the truth. Because Christ said that he is the way, the truth, and the life. So the only way you can get to the truth is to follow Christ. That's the only way. Because once we have our identity in Christ, now this stuff ain't personal. See, the problem is the world is personal for most people. It's personal. Your emotions, your thoughts, your life is tied up into what they've told you. You have an emotional attachment to the programming and propaganda. You have an emotional attachment to the lies. So again, you're going to have some courage and some faith and say, I reject the world and I'm going to lean on Christ. So again, what you have to do is examine and question everything that you've been taught, and then you compare it to the Bible. What does God say about this issue? How does God feel about socialism and communism? The Bible says that we are the lender and not the borrower. the head and not the tail. So anybody giving you a handout or letting you borrow something is already out of order, because we are the lenders, not the borrowers. We are the head, not the tail. We don't submit to man's will. We don't submit to the world's will. We submit to the will of God. You are not going to be able to see the truth if you have your emotions and your thoughts attached to this world. You better give them both to Christ. Let's continue.
Figure or historical figure is well founded, even though it's unlikely that you, on your own volition, have personally looked into these individuals to determine whether you like them or don't like them. Some might say that the safeguard against the tyranny of public opinion is the Constitution. It's true that the Constitution continues to be an inconvenient speed bump or obstacle for all-out demagoguery. The reason I use the word speed bump or obstacle instead of roadblock is because it is an obstacle that can be circumvented and has been circumvented.
How much weight does public opinion have in swaying a court case today as opposed to, say, 30 years ago?
Well, it is great. The court of public opinion, I think, is just as impactful as the court of law. And
now, this is Benjamin Milk Dud Head Crump. And he says that he believes that the court of public opinion is just as powerful as the actual courts. How do we know this? Because he wins his cases based on public opinion. He literally has a career on winning cases based on public opinion. Now, let me ask you all a question. How does that fare well for the average person? If they're talking about a social credit score, they're talking about your access to society being determined by how you behave. And let me ask you all a question. If that's going to be a real thing, then that would mean that public opinion could determine everything for you. That's what a social credit score is. It's the public's opinion about what you're doing. So my question is, are you all prepared to live in a world where public opinion trumps everything? Well, it might be too late. We're already here. And again, you got Benjamin Crump, another black person, ushering this madness in. Every wicked agenda has a black face attached to it. I don't care which one you pick. We can do a whole show of you all bringing me an agenda, and I guarantee it's going to be a black face attached to it, because you all are the people of influence. They get you all to do it. They get you all to do it to influence the rest of the world to do it. And you have not figured that out yet, that you are being used. You still haven't figured it out. They're using you. Them communists way across the world in Russia said we're going to use not nuclear weapons, not missiles, not tanks, not guns. We're going to use black people, the Negro, to destroy America. Over 100 years ago, the Russians were saying, we're going to use the black folks to do it. Y'all don't realize the game is being played? All of your programming, your public schools, your movies, your media, your Hollywood, your sports, everything has programmed your mind to make you believe that you are oppressed. But they want you to believe that you are oppressed to get the rest of the world to feel the same way. And if people feel oppressed, that will make them what? Desperate. If a person feels oppressed, they will not lean on God. They will lean on what someone has to offer them. The devil's going to offer you freedom. He's going to offer you money. He's going to offer you land. He's going to offer you everything you've ever desired and wanted. We already know that the devil will give you what you want, but you will never get to enjoy it.
You see, the way that the demagogue jumps the proverbial constitutional hurdle is through the engineering of consent, the making and manufacturing of public opinion, convincing the electorate that the ideas that they've been spoon-fed are in fact the beliefs of a intelligent and progressive public. When those constitutional speed bumps or obstacles appear in the way of laws enacted by Congress or a courtroom which insists on upholding the law and upholding the Constitution, the media and activists then weaponize public opinion against those constitutional fixtures in order to influence unconstitutional outcomes. Even though it is
Now, for all of the Tariq Nasheed followers, now I know what Chad O. Jackson is saying is flying over your head. I know this. What Chad O. Jackson just said literally flew over your head like an F-150 Tomcat fighter jet going Mach 3. I know what Chad O. Jackson just said flew over your head. So how we get past the Constitution is that you get the general public to agree to something that goes against the Constitution. So you get the general public to agree and consent to something that goes outside the guidelines of the Constitution. So, i.e., you convince Black people that if this person gets in office, they're going to be enslaved. You convince Black people that if this person becomes president, we're going back to the 1800s. You convince Black people that if this person becomes president, you won't have any health insurance. You won't be able to work. Like, you just convince Black people of the worst scenario, and then you get Black folks to crash out and vote for something that is detrimental to the entire country. That's how it works. And public opinion is strongest among Black people. How do we know this? Because the only group in America that votes for one party at almost 100% Black people. That means that the propaganda, the programming, the manipulation, all that stuff works on Black folks the best. It works on Black folks the best. Even when the immigrants come over here, they got to offer the immigrants housing, money. You can have a gun, jobs. They got to offer immigrants everything in hopes they vote for them. Think about this now. Think about this. They got to offer the immigrants everything plus the kitchen sinks and hope they vote for them. With Black people, all they got to do is say that the candidate that's running against them is racist. And you don't think it's a setup. But again, what Chad is saying is that they get the public opinion to go against the Constitution. So in other words, all this programming and propaganda that y'all consume is giving you your opinion and your thoughts. You don't have an independent thought. That's why I call it the Blatrix. It's the Black version of the Matrix. And then once Black people come out the Blatrix, then they go into the Matrix. That's another hurdle. And don't be gay and Black or trans and Black. You got the Gaytrix, the Blatrix, then the Matrix. Let's continue.
Even though it is true that social engineering is a very real thing, and you are constantly being influenced to think a certain way, to react and respond a certain way to certain events, this doesn't necessarily have to be a black pill thing for you. We read in the Bible about having a renewed mind. We read in the
Master Rich Friedman said, using Tariq, now think about this now. Think about what he said. Using Tariq Nasheed's name for clicks. Now he don't know I done went through the whole gamut of Black leaders. Umar Johnson is next. I've already exposed Marcus Garvey. We Farrakhan. We done went through the whole Brother Polite. I exposed all the Black leaders. Tariq Nasheed, there's nothing special about him.
We read in the Bible about having a renewed mind. We read in the Bible about having a sober mind. And it's all the more reason why in this world we must move with godly wisdom and discernment.
Make sure we can see this. Let's go.
But that was the guy in New York, Tariq. Frank James, y'all remember that was the guy in New York who allegedly shot up the subway in New York. Remember? How many months ago was that? They asked me, well, Mr. Nasheed, Frank James, are you familiar with him? He did a mass shooting at a subway in New York. I said, yeah, I'm familiar with the story. And they were like, well, we saw online that he followed your social media about 10 years ago. He followed you on social media and he retweeted you 10 years ago. I said, okay, and there's a lot of people who follow me and retweet me. You know, that's correct. We know you have a big following. And he's the agent said, did Mr. James ever try to reach out to you or anything? No, he didn't try to reach out to me. Now let's go back to 2016. Again, that's all cap. That's all cap. They basically wanted me to know that they got eyes on me. They wanted.
Who believes that the feds are watching Tariq Nasheed? Cap. If anybody believes that the feds are watching Tariq Nasheed, you must have been born last night. It is foolish. The feds ain't thinking about him. If anything, the way the feds are now, they want him to say this foolishness. This man had a conference where he had y'all paying money to sit down to listen to people show y'all how to beg the government for money. All this reparation talk goes back to begging the government for money. And the Bible says if a man don't work, he don't eat. So again, feeling like somebody is owed something, reparations should have been fought for by the black folks that started getting reparations and then they took it away. When that 4 acres and a mule started, they started handing it out. It's supposed to be in 5 states. So why didn't the black folks then fight for that 4 acres and a mule? Y'all love praising the ancestors. So if they're getting so much praise from you all, when y'all sitting there and you got your altar set up and your sage burning, your crystals and all that stuff, and you're drinking pigeon blood, trying to open up a gateway, when y'all sit there talking to the ancestors, I want y'all to ask them a question for me. Ask them, when it was time for them to fight for that 4 acres and a mule, why didn't they do it? All I hear is y'all was fighting in the wars, the Gullah Wars, the Seminoles. Y'all was fighting the whole time. So then why didn't y'all fight for your reparations? It don't make sense. Y'all was already fighting. Y'all said they were stealing land. So y'all should have been fighting for that 40 acres and a mule because that was on the books. And my shirt says ancient American, but most of them can't read because most black children aren't reading, writing, or doing math on grade level. They can't even read. No context, just all emotion.
And they started asking me about Micah Johnson. Hey, they wanted me to know that they got eyes on me. They did this. Remember in 2016, they came to my crib and they started asking me about Micah Johnson. Hey, you know, are you familiar with Micah Johnson? Yeah, I'm familiar with him. Did you know him? Did he ever reach out to you? No, he never did. Are you a part of any nefarious organization? No, I'm not. Micah Johnson, has he ever emailed you? I said, good. If he emailed me, you guys would know it. You guys been monitoring my emails and phone calls for decades. They've been on my bumper for years.
Man, this is what's funny, right? Tariq Nasheed used to be a pimp. So I imagine he has a criminal record if he was pimping. So ain't nobody been on your bumper. Why would the feds be bothering you if you pimping? Unless you trafficking minors across state lines, unless you trafficking women across state lines, that's the only way the feds will get involved if you was trafficking. But the feds ain't finna get involved because you just pimping. They ain't finna get involved with that. But again, it just sounds good. It's 2 ways you get in front of black people. You got to be decadent or talk about race or both. You get in front of black people. But again, Tariq Nasheed was pimping, so he says. So clearly the feds ain't getting involved with pimping unless you're doing something that's very drastic. But let's continue.
So they asked me, again, fast forwarding to today, they were asking me if I knew him. And let me tell you, this is the kicker right here. I said, yeah, he didn't reach out to me. I don't know anything about him. The white cop or the white agent said, did he reach out to any other FBA? They asked me, did Frank James reach out to any other FBAs? He used the term FBA. No. He didn't reach out to any other FBAs that I know of. So they asked me, did this guy reach out to any other FBA? And I reminded them, I said, by the way,
the feds ain't thinking about Tariq Nasheed. That's all cap. Nobody takes foundational black Americans serious. Nobody. Not a single soul. They go up there and beg for reparations. Ain't nobody taking them serious. Stop.
Much respect to all the brothers and sisters here in the Bay Area. First of all, I want to make 3 quick points about reparations. and then let our other brothers and sisters speak. First thing, we have to understand we have to focus and keep the emphasis on it being lineage based. The problem is we see a lot of trick bag language being mixed into it where it opens the floor for other groups to come in and undermine us. Reparations in the form of lineage-based compensation is not a compensation for racism. Let's be very clear. If we open the door to racism, Hispanics can come in, Asians can come in, Middle Eastern people can come in. It will become affirmative action again, where we are left holding the crumbs and everybody else is holding the cake. So we have to focus on the lineage-based reparations.
Does he sound like he's making demands, or does it sound like he's begging? Honestly.
Especially the aggrievement that our foundation of Black American lineage accrued out here in California. In California, this was a state that allowed slavery. People say that this wasn't a slave state. There was informal slavery here. The only reason they made it a technicality to make slavery illegal in California, they didn't want the white wealthy slave owners back east coming here getting all the prime real estate. They had slavery out here. Our foundation of Black American brothers and sisters and our ancestors were out here working enslaved. San Bernardino, California was a slave colony. There were slave colonies here around the Bay Area. We couldn't get out of slavery because they made it illegal for Black people to testify against white people. That's how they trick bagged us up into slavery here. We have to be compensated for that. The second thing,
California wasn't even a part of the United States when the Emancipation Proclamation was issued.
Is we can't include all of these other groups with our reparations package. We hear a lot of Black and Native American. We hear a lot of Black and brown. That won't work either. All of these other groups, they've been compensated. Every single group besides Foundation of Black Americans has been compensated. White slave owners were compensated.
Everybody got paid except us. Listen to what he's saying. He's basically saying that not only did you get your chain snatched, not only did you get your bike took, but then you watch Debo pass out gifts in the hood. Think about it. This is the equivalent to Debo taking your chain, taking your bike, taking $200 from you. This is the equivalent to Debo taking everything and then breaking bread with everybody that just came into the neighborhood.
Immigrants in the 18th have been compensated. Every single group besides Foundation of Black Americans has been compensated. White slave owners were compensated. White immigrants in the 1800s were compensated with the
denial is a river in Egypt. This man now created a hidden history museum. For what? How much does it cost to go to the Hidden History Museum? Okay, so the Hidden History Museum is only open Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tariq Nasheed presents a comedy showcase at the Hidden History Museum. Oh. Get your spring fever tickets now at $39. Oh, so the Hidden History Museum is acting as an event space. And then he can sell his products in there. You got your Hidden Heroes from A to Z book. Donate to the Hidden History Museum. Donate 10, 20, 50, 100, 500, 1,000. Custom your amount. About us. Yeah, so basically, it's a scam. Ain't nobody going to that museum. It's being used as an event space. So basically, you use it for about 5 hours for a museum, then you use it for an event space. I love y'all, and I will see you all again Saturday.